Good morning and welcome to In Search of Prosperity Sisterhood. We are so glad to have you. It is a Monday morning, and wow, like I've had a lot of things stewing in my brain these last few days since we last met. And I want to open by saying if something catches your ears, if something makes you stop and think, if something comes to mind and you don't want to lose it, throw it in the chat. Ask the question, raise your hand, whatever those things are. And then when we go into our discussion, we'll grab those and that's where we'll start. Or not, you can say, don't call on me first. That's okay too. We do have some shy ones in the group for now. They won't be shy for long. I'm not worried about that. So this morning, I wanted to talk about being a good listener. And a little tagline I wrote. I'm a tagline freak. Like, bring it on. Give me a tagline or give me a challenge. I'll help you with the tagline. I can make it happen. But the one that I came up with this morning was lifelong learning includes listening, because it includes people. It includes yourself, like listening to yourself in your heart. We opened this sisterhood in that first discussion with that conversation with ourself and listening to our heart. So then when we open up to listen to others, it can be that first meeting. It can be that it's just been a while, or it's a family member you haven't seen in a while. Asking questions, bringing some questions kind of in your back pocket, like, oh, I wanted to ask so-and-so this, or this is a good question that always opens the conversation with a new person I'm networking with, or someone that's a potential employee or something like that, right? Come with or have those questions just kind of at the ready. Sometimes I'll ask someone a question that just totally changes the conversation, right? But if that's what's on your heart and you need to know more, whether it's something you know nothing about or something you think you're an expert at, and they just said something that kind of triggered something in you, right? The key is to ask the question and then shut up. It's hard. I'll say this now, I've said it 100 times. I'll say it another 150,000 times. I'm Scorpio and a control freak, and I like to control the narrative and talk and do all the things. And sometimes you just have to shut up. It's also fun when you can ask really creative questions, right? So when you can totally change that gear of that conversation. One question I like to ask, we're coming up on the holidays. I've said this a bunch of times, right? But we're coming up on the holidays, and maybe you're seeing some people you haven't seen in a while. You see somebody in the grocery store line you haven't seen in a couple of years, or whatever that might be. Asking the question like, what's next for you? What's up? What are you working on? You get some really cool, crazy answers. I've had someone say, well, I'm flying to Vegas tomorrow to buy a car I didn't plan on buying. Okay, right? Like that can be fun, right? That those answers can be fun when you just say, hey, what's next for you? What's up? And then it puts it all on them. And they don't have to be like all weird or awkward or wonder what to ask you. And yet it's a no pressure kind of question, right? And it allows you to listen and learn some cool things about someone maybe you haven't seen in a while. Or if we go into the business conversation of this is a first meeting and you're asking them what their plans are, what's coming up next for them, they're in their brain, they're going, how can they help me with this? Right? So they're going to maybe present a problem or present this really cool thing that they just created and are implementing, right? They're going to, when you ask someone what's next for them, and I'll ask you ladies, what's next for you? A lot of times, sorry, a lot of times when we are growing and expanding and moving forward and doing the next thing, problems exist. And so this is that perfect opportunity for you, the listener, the asker, to create and find connections. Because it's not necessarily just about you and what you can offer them and what you're doing. But hey, so and so's writing a book. Hey, I know a writing coach. If you need a connection, let me know. My husband's looking for a new job. Oh, great, mine's hiring. Right? Like listening, sometimes, usually, they'll present to you the problem they're working on. And that can be so much fun. I'm just excited about that for every lady that listens to this to go out and ask that question. Okay, what's next for you? What's up? And then you got to shut up. And I say that to myself too, because you don't want that. You don't always want that awkward pause or the whatever, but you're not going to get that when you bring to them that question of what's next for you. And it allows you to find ways to connect. Whether it's, oh my gosh, I had that same problem. Don't run them over with the answer. You don't have to run them over with the answer, but you can say, hey, I had that same problem. And this is what I did. Now, this is what you should do. But this is what I did. This is what we did. This is how it was resolved. I really hope a solution is found for you, right? That connection, like how good does that feel? Like just hearing that one-sided conversation from me, right? Like where are the opportunities for you to connect? And it's in asking questions and shutting up. One final question I would ask prospective clients in that first meeting where you're asking questions, you're not presenting. When you're asking questions, and this can be the same in an interview process, the question I would like to close with these meetings was, in a perfect or magical or utopian world, what would it look like to work with my company or a company like mine? Or with a company that offers a service like mine? In a perfect world, what would it look like? And you would get some really cool answers. Like it'd be really cool if you offered this because then I would have fewer vendors to deal with. Or I really only want to work 3 days a week, but nobody's hiring me because of that. Right? They're presenting either those little burrs under their saddle or those big problems or those big asks when they're asked, hey, in a magical world that only butterflies and rainbows exist in, what would this look like? Like, just give it to me. Like, you dream about this at night because whatever it is I'm presenting you had been bothering you, right? So bring it on. Like, what would it look like? And then you as the presenter can repackage that or sympathize with that and have fun with it. Because sometimes they'll just pull something out of their hat and you can both laugh about it. But sometimes they'll bring some really cool ideas. And again, you have to ask. So I like to offer the advice to bring 3 questions to the table, whatever table you're sitting at. to bring 3 questions. And this kind of goes along with the idea of creative thinking, because if you're at a table with multiple people, you're going to get all sorts of answers. And so sometimes you have to ask questions with the answer in mind of A, B, or C. But sometimes those open-ended questions are, again, where you just shut up. You just let it out. Because nobody's asked them that in 27 years, right? And you're there to eventually present a solution. But a couple of weeks ago, Stevie had brought up in our discussion, bringing up obstacles. Like, what would keep you from going to the gym every day? Well, I live 27 miles from the gym. That kind of keeps me, this is truth from Shaina, that is something that keeps me from going to a gym. But you know what? I have a gym out my door. So if she had told me I had to go to the gym every day, I wouldn't talk to Stevie again. Like, that's not the answer I'm looking for, right? So instead of bringing the answers forward, ask the questions. And then the obstacles present themselves, right? Because we do live in kind of a negative world. So the negative things are at the forefront. Well, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that, and la, 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 right? So once you sift through that, sometimes it takes repeating the question. Okay, now that we got all that out of the way, what's the real problem? What's the real whatever, right? Like, so now that we got, sometimes when you ask that question, like in a perfect world, they just spew that negativity. Well, I don't want this and I don't want that. And this has always never worked and blah, blah, blah. You can go back to that same question, whatever you've asked, and say, okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way, in an actually perfect world where don'ts don't exist, what do you got for me? So then a fourth question is the opportunity to move the conversation forward. It's offering to make that connection. It's asking if it would make sense to continue the conversation about an opportunity into a sales presentation, into that whatever. That fourth question is kind of a closing question. It's a next step question. And you can use this with your family. Like I said, that fourth question can be, hey, if I connected you with so-and-so, would that make sense? So then the key to asking questions is taking notes, putting them in a specific place, in a specific notebook, in a specific document on your computer, in a specific CRM that tracks all of those relationships that you're gathering. Thank them for their time, because time is a very precious commodity. You all who have spent the last 15 minutes listening to me and here on the replay, that time is valuable, which means I need to bring that value to you all. And then I need to thank you for that. Show that appreciation. Send an email, send a card, send a voice message. That touch, that sound touching their ears is way better than just a regular text message, right? Because they know it wasn't copy and paste, but that you really took the time to thank them for their time. It's a very precious commodity, the most precious commodity. And it does not go unnoticed here, because It is. It is so precious. And for you women to be spending this time with me is huge. I can't even like, it's hard to define, right? Because my definition of time is different than your definition of time. And it's the same with, that just makes me think of like dollars per hour. Like, what are you getting paid to sit here and listen to me? Right. And that doesn't go unnoticed. And then finally connect them, follow through. Whether it's checking on them in 3 weeks to see if they made that deadline or goal or whatever, or sharing that connection because you said you would. Like I said, hey, you're writing a book, I know a writing coach, right? And it would do everybody a disservice because I wouldn't be able to read your book if I didn't connect you with my writing coach who connects with you, right? Like you have all those connection points available to you. And it takes listening, it takes stopping and turning off your volume and listening to others. And I opened with also, we started this sisterhood talking about listening to our hearts. And sometimes when you're listening to someone, you pick up on the tiniest little detail if you're listening to your heart. And it says, hey, she just used the same word that Cindy used. Huh. I wonder if they're reading the same dictionary, right? Like sometimes those little teeny tiny triggers, your heart pings them, it hears them. So your heart's listening to you. So in closing, going into our discussion, I'm going to leave the recording on for our discussion. And I want to hear about a cool connection you made in a conversation where you're like, hey, wait a second, so and so is going to the same school. Or, like I said, so and so uses the same word as the person I was just talking to, right? Like, what are those little things that you've picked up on in a conversation that spearheaded something, that took something in a totally different direction? And when was the last time you asked a really good question, or what were asked a really good question? Because sometimes, of course, we remember what was brought to us, which is why we should be asking good questions, because we remember good questions too. So I'm curious, when it comes to asking questions, what are some questions you've asked? What's a question you've been wanting to ask, but you don't know how to? Like you're missing that word or that phrase that is going to make that question stick. Maybe there's a conversation you're in the middle of that you can't, you're like, I know there's something I need to ask this person, but how do I ask it to get to the result, right? Because we want to know what the next step is, whatever those things are. So maybe there's a question that's been burning you and you're just like, how do I ask this? Because in this group, we have some really awesome positive peer pressure, which we experienced and did not record last week. But that positive peer pressure, I promised it would come, and it's here. I promise that. But maybe there's a question you need some positive peer pressure on that says, hey, I've been meaning to ask this question, but I can't seem to get it. Am I saying it right? Am I approaching it from the right angle? I want to have that conversation with you ladies today. And anything else that triggered you? I didn't see anything in the comments quite yet. But bring it on. I'm gonna unpin my video and we're gonna get into this discussion. Welcome, ladies. Hello, hello. Ooh, we've got a Merry Christmas shirt in the room.
I'm heading to a party at a residential home for girls this evening. It's going to be a great great time. So I will be hearing and listening to a lot of stories, heartbreaking ones, I'm sure, in prostitution. They are between 13 and 17 years old, but it's going to be amazing. So a lot of listening tonight.
And holding space for them.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
awesome. I love that. What got you involved with that?
So I volunteer with a group called Shoes for the Shoeless. Usually our life is going into the schools and providing new shoes and socks to kids who need them. This kind of branched off. It's a place called Ranch of Opportunity, and they reached out to the director for Shoes for the Shoeless and just said, hey, can you do that for our girls since they're not in the regular schools? And so we call it our Race to Christmas. Usually the month of December is all about doing things for the kids who are truly at the greatest need, who won't have gifts under their trees usually. So Chris, who's the director, she can't do it in just a little fashion of delivering shoes. So we create an entire party. So there will be shoes and socks there, but it'll also involve Chick-fil-A donates dinner. We have girls from the cosmetology school come and do their hair and their nails. We have buyers for each one of the girls. So all 18 girls will get big bags full of gifts, everything that they asked for on their wish lists. They have no idea it's happening though. So we will surprise them tonight.
Oh man. I love asking that question. After I asked it, I'm like, I asked that question a lot. And that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But how cool is that they're like, no, we don't do anything small. We're gonna do this, and this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, we do a similar event for a boys' home. That'll be Thursday night. But those boys are 5 to 13 years old. They've had to be removed and will most likely be institutionalized for a while. But instead of the hair and nails, obviously they get a magician. And their setting isn't as pretty as the girls. The girls are actually on a horse farm, a 22-acre horse farm. The boys are in a facility that's more inner city. So we still try to make it a good party for them too, a nice big deal. And yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. And by sharing this, I mean, who knows who's going to hear that and be like, wait a second, shoes are my thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah. Well, we just had because we're in Ohio, so we're out of Dayton, Ohio. And then we have Cincinnati, who's just an hour away from us, and you have the Cincinnati Bengals football team. Well, they got wind of what we're doing, and they actually wore Shoes for the Shoeless. Two of the players wore Shoes for the Shoeless cleats because they did cleats for a cause a couple weeks ago. And they've offered for their players to donate their time and go into the schools with us down in Cincinnati, and to start a whole new branch of Shoes for the Shoeless in Cincinnati to help that group of kids too. So yeah, it was just them, people sharing the stories on Facebook and Instagram of us going into the schools, and someone with that organization caught wind of it. So it's going to be pretty awesome.
I love that. And someone caught wind, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a teacher in one of the schools that saw, the post that had been shared several times. And she said, we need that down here. And my friend Chris said, I just don't know if I have the resources to help all of Cincinnati. Let's go to a couple of schools first. And yeah, somehow other connections were made, and now the Cincinnati Bengals are on board. So who would have known?
Right. That's awesome. Earlier last week, Brenda actually in this group brought to my attention one of the organization I've been involved in had been broken into and vandalized. And yeah. And so I shared their post and I went in and did what I could. But then I was like, share it. Like this is the program I'm involved in. And I had a couple friends say, yep, donated. And then last night, my grandparents called me who are on Facebook. And they said, we saw your post and we know you're involved in that organization. Where do we send a check? And they said, yeah. And they were like, oh, a distant cousin had been helped by that organization like 30 years ago, and just kind of told me a bunch of stuff. And yeah, like a new connection I have even just with my grandparents. Like I didn't.
Right.
You just never know where it's going to land. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll leave them all their money or something. I don't know. That would be cool too.
Yeah.
Not as cool as the Cincinnati Bengals, which we don't have here. We have nothing. I love it. Yes, Brenda, social media is huge. It is that wind catcher. Like we can use it for that positive thing. Right?
Right.
Honestly, if someone's using it for negative things, goodbye. Like, I'm out. I love it. Kathy commented, what an awesome program. So Kathy, do you have a story for us maybe?
I don't really have a story, but I love what she's doing because I just think what a great way to give and serve. So, no, I don't have a program. I was thinking of a question though.
Let's hear it.
I have found, I think it's really good to find out, okay, what are your obstacles? What are you not feeling good about or whatever? But it's such a shift when you ask a question of what's going well? What do you think you do well? Because that really kind of takes it another direction, but it kind of gives you a fuller picture of what's going on. I think it just adds to what you're suggesting here. So I know I do that. And then I was going to make one other comment too, is that, I think sometimes when, especially in sales, when things don't go well, or, you didn't make it happen. I'm the only reason I'm saying this because I'm guilty of it. Is that, you kind of pick on yourself and it's like, oh, what did I do wrong? What could I have done different or whatever? And that's not good to do because that now you're putting the focus back on yourself and what's wrong with me, but really maybe nothing's wrong with you. It just didn't fit them, or maybe we didn't ask enough good questions or whatever. So anyway, that was my comment. But above and beyond all of that, I just love the program, and I wish we had like a football team that we could get involved. Last night, this is really funny. This is really taking this down a rabbit hole, but we're a football family, clearly. And the Jaguars were playing last night, and of course they got beat. But Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback for the Jaguars, and the little bugger. Of course, these guys make so much money. He bought his front line all golf carts. Now that costs some money, but it makes me think about, here's the Bengals. I mean, those guys have money. I mean, they make millions and millions of dollars. And so why not tap into an outfit like that to help with your program? I think that is so cool what you did.
Kathy, I want to piggyback off what you're saying of like, when you're talking about your sales conversations, right? Like when they don't go right and you go back on yourself, it makes me think like, I'm never doing that again, right? Like The whole, but what if we just pieced it out? What if I just never asked that question in that way again? Or yeah, approach it in that way, or talk to the person at the front desk that way, or whatever that thing is. Like, I actually, a few weeks ago, I shared in another small group discussion, actually at a training I attended, I shared this during a discussion. When you ask, when you're in a sales conversation, you ask the wrong question at the wrong time, like the whole thing just explodes, right? It just explodes in your face. Like, game over. Just you should just leave now, you know? And I've done that once. And I can almost tell you every single detail. I know what building it was in. I can't remember the business name, but I know what building it was in Casper, Wyoming. Like, I went in there with the wrong intentions, blah blah blah, got to the end of the conversation and asked for referrals. I don't even remember the guy's name. And it was like the way I said it and the way I left, I was like, oh my gosh, I am so rude. I am so like, how did I even get to that point? I can't believe I asked that question, like all those things. But instead of I'm never doing that again, whether it's I'm never asking for referrals again, or I'm never going in on a cold call from drawing somebody's business card at a chamber mixer or whatever, like it wasn't those things. I was just like, I am never asking that question in that way ever again. Because it was horrible and it was embarrassing and all the things. Do you think I got a referral out of the deal? No. Do you think I was shown the door pretty quickly? Yeah. But I think those types of things, like, you got to do it at least once so you know what not to do, right? Not the whole thing. Like I said, the whole never doing again. I'm never asking for referrals or never doing cold calls. But you got to, there's something in there you should probably never do again if you come out with that feeling, right? Brenda's like, that's funny. Yes, it's funny and embarrassing, and I'm not afraid to share it because we all have to do it sometime. We all have to do that thing really badly once. Like, Cindy's over here baking, like, you can't tell me she hasn't burnt at least one tray, like. But I can tell you she didn't put it in a bag to sell, right? Like, and that's, yeah, it just makes me think of that interaction, like what I did and what I took out of it, what I didn't, and what I said I would never do again. You just can't never do sales again, or hire somebody again, or things like that, like hold you back on a big scale. So Brenda came on video. You got something for me, Brenda?
Well, Shaina, you know the story behind the whole grease trap thing. And I guess I feel like anytime there's issues or problems, we kind of tend to blow them up a little bit, but not that they aren't worthy of being blown up. But I always ask myself, what did I learn from this? What lesson did I learn from this situation that didn't go very well? And with that whole grease trap thing, the thing I learned, and I don't know if I shared this, Shaina, was have the meeting with them first. All the communication issues that were going on, that, you know, this person thought that and this person thought that, and oh, that's where your mop sink is. Well, you don't need a grease trap there. I didn't know that. They didn't know that. So it's like, have the meeting first. Yeah.
That is something you could write an entire book on, your experience from the last 4 months, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that though. Have the meeting first. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of the opposite of this meeting could have been an email, right? Like, if we get everybody, all the people, all the experiences, all the emotions, all the deadlines, everything in the same room, it can just be done, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we have meetings when there should be emails, and we do emails when we actually should be having a meeting. And
Picking up the phone.
yeah, we need to
Using your
figure out
voice.
the line between those things, because Brenda would have a lot more hair left.
Brenda
And
does
some of
not
that
need a
is-
wig for Christmas, but it's close. No.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, just my 2 cents.
Yeah. I think it goes back to one of the things I said earlier about thanking people for their time, sending that email, that card, that voice message. So like with a voice message, you hear the pause, you hear the emotion, you hear, hey, this is where I'm coming from, which you can't really type out in an email that's not 17 pages long. Right? You can get to the point in a voicemail much faster than an email in some cases, vice versa too, right? Because we've all had that where an email should just be 2 sentences and we wrote an entire chapter. I think that, like, I have this generational theory. I think that's something we can learn from the Generation X generation, of just straight to the point. Like A equals B minus C. Like just push send, right? So there's that. But then we learn from the baby boomer generation of just pick up the phone, just have the meeting, right? And especially in sales and cold calls or warm calls or anything else, so much can happen in a quick 5-minute phone call that 10 emails and 3 stop bys can't do. And it's kind of scary picking up the phone those first few times, but it's all practice. So one thing I like to ask as we go into closing, is there anything exciting? What's next for you in the next few days? Is there anything we can cheer you on about going into the week?
We pass inspections.
It's going to happen.
Definitely cheer on for that, man.
Oh, yeah.
That is awesome. Yes. That's on the schedule for this week, is what you're saying. Yeah. Good. Yes.
Yep, we fixed the things they wanted us to do. So tomorrow they come in, the fire department and the city, and do their final, and then next Friday, the 29th, the health department comes, and then that's the final one.
Yeah.
So
And you're an old hat. You've done that a few times.
yeah,
Yep.
we got
What
that.
they're looking for. Good. Awesome. I'm gonna shout out Kathy. She has a class coming up, empowering you on from Image of Excellence, her business. And it's a series. If you want to give us a little information on that, Kathy. So that's coming up. How's that? I asked you to unmute. That's what I get for putting her on the spot. I can't hear you. There
Okay.
you go.
All right, there we go. For whatever reason, it wouldn't let me unmute. So Shaina, you probably were controlling that, is what I
We
could
were
guess.
probably over clicking each other is what was happening. Anyway.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm super excited about, it's called Empowering You. And it's a series. It begins in January 5th. It's a Friday. It goes from 10 to 12. And then again, we meet in February, that's February 1st. And then again, we meet in March. So in that month between, I give things for people to do, to just really feed the class. And so what the class is about, it's really about confidence. I would say years ago, I've struggled with confidence. And so I was very fortunate that I was part of a mentoring group. And one of the ladies that was a part of the mentoring team did image consulting. And that was such a huge door opener for me to learn. I mean, we learn about our personality, but what about learning who we are and what our brand is? And so, just clarifying who you are, knowing what your clothing personality style is, learning what colors look best on you. So the first series is about personal branding. And I'm pretty excited about that one because it just really will help you define who you are, what your style is, or whatever. It really feeds your confidence. And then the second session in February will be on confidence, but we really take a look at influences and have a better understanding about that, and tips for being more confident. And then the third one is on leadership. So it all kind of works together. And I do have a special speaker on the third session on leadership. I have Leah Braun. So if anybody knows Leah works for the city, and she's really a sharp woman, knows a lot about leadership. So she's going to be contributing to that last session. So anyway, the session starts in January. The price is $375. If people choose just to come to one of the sessions, it's $135. And yeah, so anyway, I'm excited about it. I think it's a great way to really start off the year, really have some clarification on yourself and what you want to accomplish, what you want people to think about you. Because that's kind of important. We all have a message that we give people. And are you giving the message that you want? So you can define that and refine it and put it all together in the class.
Yeah. Like what you want it to look like, right? I love that, putting that visual together. That is amazing. Thank you, Kathy, for sharing that. I'm cheering you on about that because that's
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. I know you've put a lot of work and love and energy into that. So
I have. I get excited about it. I think it's going to be really good. And I just really want to bless the women who come. It's kind of more for women. I do men as well, but it is such a blessing. Once you know that step, once you know what you know, it just takes you up to another level. It's just like your business. You know your business really well, better than anybody else. And so the more you learn and know, it just elevates you. And that's kind of what it's about. It's just elevating and it's empowering you. So anyway, I probably talked, but it is really fun. I just feel like it blessed me so much, made such a world of difference for me. And I just want to turn around and do that for others.
Fantastic. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Anything else as we close out before we get back to work? All right, let's get back to work. Cindy's been working this whole time. Thanks for being on video, Cindy. I love it. All right, ladies, let's get back to work.
Have a good day. Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas.